It was the 1095th day of his imprisonment in this world. Thoughts of escape did not leave him for a second. All this time, he was followed by suffering, disappointment, despair, and when his life became completely unbearable, she appeared and kindled a flame in the guy 3 times. At the same time, he swore that he would bring her out alive and unharmed. It all started with an ordinary day in high school. The main character's name is Chingjil. In the eyes of others he was an ordinary school student. He didn't have any difficulties that he couldn't solve. But it lasted exactly until the guy fell in love with a problem girl. At this moment, Qin Xiaomei turned to the guy and asked him to do homework for her, because in the evening she is going to go on a quest. The guy shyly agrees and asks the red-haired girl if he can play this game too. The girl quickly agrees, because they just don't have enough support in the team. She offers the guy to come to the village for beginners in the evening. She also gave him her ID. On the way home, the guy was met by a heavy downpour. He repeated the girl's ID so as not to forget him. He desperately hopes to make it to his city by 8 to play this toy. Arriving home, Hila met her mother. She offers the black-haired man to take a break and wait, because dinner will be ready soon. But the guy asks if it is possible to order from the delivery and received consent from his mother. After that he turned his attention to the game console and moments later quietly carried it to his room. The mother saw this out of the corner of her eye and reminded him that he needed to rest. At the same time she asked him not to forget to eat. But the trace of the boy had long since disappeared. The woman realized that apparently he had agreed to play with someone since he was in such a hurry. It was raining heavily outside, and lightning was also striking. The guy took the helmet out of the box and began to think about it on the bed. In his hands is the most popular virtual reality game called Space. Just the helmet is enough to play. This will be his first gaming experience while the rest are already experts in this field. But he does not get upset because he will surely cope with this toy. At that moment, a message from Xiaomei came to the black-haired man's phone. She asked the guy to come in quickly and he did so. The guy put on his helmet and started his first connection to the game. At the same moment, the guy plunged into a strange platform and a big screen appeared in front of him, which thanked Gil for buying the game, and also welcomed him to this project. Soon he had all the necessary information that clearly explained the essence of the game. Space is a survival game. Here he will experience the stories of myths of all countries. In the local world, dangers will lie in wait for him from all sides, but he will also be able to find incredible treasures and wonders. Before starting his own adventure, he was offered to choose his class. At the same moment a huge list of different classes appeared in front of the boy. At the same time he remembered the words of his classmate who said that they lack support in the group. With these thoughts the guy chooses the class of a doctor. Also, for the purchase of the game, he is offered to wear free clothes and Jill decides to wear a suit in honor of such a strange date. Now he was ready to plunge into the fairy tale world. After that, the download to the fabulous game world began. At this time, in the real world, a red level of weather danger was announced and residents of the city were persistently asked to turn off electrical appliances in order to avoid possible accidents. At the same moment a huge electric discharge went to Gil's house, and while the guy was looking forward to his date, a strong electric discharge was being picked up behind his back. At the same moment, the guy screamed in pain and was covered with an electric shock. He did not understand what was happening, when suddenly he flew out of bed and a bright light lit up his room. From the guy there was only a helmet. Going into the room the mother wanted to ask her son to check all the equipment in the house, but he was not there. A crowd of terrible hungry monsters surrounded the defenseless girl. From her helplessness she screamed and called for help, when suddenly a bright light lit up the street and at the same moment a new player appeared in the forest in front of the girl, Jill. The tearful maiden rushed to her hero. The guy apologized for being late and promises that she has nothing more to worry about. At the same time, Xiaomei called the guy her hero and approached his lips. At that moment there was a kiss, but the guy asked not to hurry, because he already had drool all over his face. At the same time Gil regained consciousness and found himself on a deserted street. Looking at his Xiaomei that he was kissing a second ago, the guy could not understand what an amazing transfer of sensations in this game. He felt as if electricity was passing through his body, but it was a pleasant feeling. Apparently, he decided that he was already in that game, but surprisingly it was hot there and everything was too realistic. But something was strange. because judging by the stories, he was originally supposed to be uploaded to the village for beginners, but here he did not meet a soul. At the same time, he decided to write to Xiaomei through the system, but he could not find her by ID, which was also strange, because Gil was sure that her nickname had entered correctly. At the same time, he had no choice but to continue on his way to the village for beginners. He decided that the girl must surely be waiting for him somewhere nearby. An hour later, the tired guy was looking at the game map, but he never found the initial village. At the same time, the guy decides to contact the support service, but soon the system started talking and reported that Jill is now outside the service area. These circumstances greatly confuse the guy, because the fact that he can't even contact support is very strange. At the same time, he threw off his jacket and began to reflect on his situation. According to his calculations, on such a hot day, his body secretes about 900 milliliters of sweat, which means fainting and dehydration. It's only a matter of time. Gil did not expect that the games were so difficult, and at the same time he decided to get out of it and check with his girlfriend what was the matter. However, when trying to leave this game, the system lit up red and announced an unauthorized exit attempt. The scared guy didn't understand what was going on and tried to get out again, but all attempts were unsuccessful. At the same time, the black-haired kid drooped. He couldn't accept the idea that he was locked in this shitty game. At that moment, a notification flashed in front of him. The boy received a new task, the essence of which was survival. The reward was classified, and time was endless. Gil didn't understand why he was cursed. He was just playing with a girl, but in the end he was locked up in this place. He had already tried everything to get out, but it didn't work out. Then the thought flashed through his head, is he really going to stay here forever? For 8 hours spent in the game, his faith in his own strength has dried up. But he got used to the idea that he would never get out of here. This world was very similar to the real one. Thirst bothered him from the indescribable heat, and his head was spinning. He understood that if he did not come up with something soon, he would certainly die. Therefore, the exhausted boy decided to find a water source first. At the same time, Gil remembered that his grandfather once watched a program about survival. It mentioned that this kind of stones can be found near a water source, which means water is where there is a lot of slate. The guy continued on his way, but he did not even realize that he had become someone's prey. Soon he reached a pile of stones, and then in a dark cave he found a source of water. His joy knew no bounds, and at that hour he rushed to the well and began to drink greedily. After drinking enough, he finally felt alive, but the wolf had almost reached the cave. If the guy decided to take a break from the heat inside the cave, although he solved the issue with water, the black-haired man did not understand how to get out of this cursed place. By looking into the system's cache, he hopes to find some clue. However, only the explored areas are displayed on the map, so everything turned out to be much more complicated than it might seem. After that, the guy decided to carefully study the system data just in case. After looking at his indicators, he was convinced that they were at 0. At the same time, the system gave a hint and said that a certain level or fulfillment of specified conditions was required to acquire abilities. But the guy didn't understand what was meant. Then he decides to take a look at his equipment. Soon gloves and a long sword fall from the inventory. Gil did not expect that his class also relies on a sword, but for safety it will definitely not be superfluous. Taking the blade out of the scabbard, he decides to practice, and swinging well, cuts through the rocks without any problems. The sword turned out to be much stronger than a real weapon. At the same time, he suggested that there are many types of visualizations in this game, because weapons here have their own strength, and for this blow he lost 1 unit of strength out of 100. At that moment, a loud sound was heard in the cave, and his causal was the guy's hungry stomach. Then he decides to look for food, because otherwise he won't last long without it. Suddenly he heard a strange sound, and then he decides to explore this strange cave. Surprisingly, it turned out to be very spacious. A gnawed bone falls in front of the yellow-eyed boy, and he notices 100 similar corpses. He could not understand where this pile of animal bones came from. At the same time, he decides to pick up one of them and carefully examine it. Taking a close look, he discovers traces of teeth. He had seen similar ones in books earlier, and then it dawns on him that he urgently needs to get out of here. The kid gets loose and starts running, but at the same moment a huge animal mouth and hundreds of fangs appear in front of his face. Miraculously, he was able to react to this and dodge the deadly danger, but still a desert wolf of the 5th level was still standing in front of him, and he needed to do something with him. The advantage of this: the monster is resistant, and it can also reach a speed of up to 10 kilometers per hour, and chasing its victim it becomes even faster. The main type of attack is a wolf bite, and the strength of its bite is about 200 kilograms. The system assumes that the only unprotected place of the monster is the belly. At the moment the difference is 3 levels, so the guy has a big chance of losing. Despite the fact that the guy successfully dodged, he was still battered, and Gil realizes that it is useless to run, since his opponent is much faster than him, so he will have to fight. And to lose is to die. In the 1st grade of high school, he served as the head of the Kendo club, and he was also the youngest master in the country with the 6th dan. He himself did not know why to study this martial art, but the reason was very simple. In his youth his mother was a fan of this sport, and it was then that she became obsessed with this idea. That's how he started doing Kendo from early childhood. When the black-haired man started, he thought it was a simple sport, because for him you need to wear beautiful clothes and fight pathetically. But a little deeper into training, he realized that the movements are not easy. Standing in front of an opponent dressed in a uniform, the heart starts pounding furiously, and the breath gets lost. It is at the same time that a veil of horror begins to envelop you. At such a moment his body stopped moving, and the source of this horror was his own weakness. The only way to get rid of it is continuous training, constant work on yourself, and constant overcoming of laziness. That's how it happened that Gil spent all his free time in a dojo that didn't even have air conditioning. He continued to hone every move millions of times. Constantly losing, constantly being injured, constantly practicing, doing swing after swing, he continued until he became the youngest master in the country with the 6th dan. But in a world where the law of the jungle reigns, it is impossible to predict how terrifying your next opponent will be. But this is no reason to underestimate Gil. With these thoughts, the boy strikes his formidable blow. However, instead of killing the nameless wolf, the sword cracks and then the monster gives his retaliatory blow, after which the guy flies into the wall. Rising up, Jill does not understand what is the matter, because the creature on the contrary absolutely does not care about this sword. At the same time the system declares that attacks are useless because the desert wolf has extremely powerful armor, so the game repeats and asks the player not to forget that the weak point of this monster is the belly. After listening to the hint, the guy becomes clear where to hit, but this does not change the situation that the wolf is too fast, and every time he tries to bite the black-haired man to death. Suddenly the guy bumps into the wall, and realizes that if he continues to defend himself, he will lose sooner or later. Trapped in a corner, he is overtaken by a terrible thought. Is he really going to die here? Drops of scarlet blood are pouring onto the ground. A hungry monster rushed at a defenseless guy and bit through his shoulder. But despite this, Gil did not show any of his emotions, after which he plunged his sword into the belly of the wolf and was defeated in this battle for survival. He deliberately allowed the monster to bite him in order to relax his vigilance and get to a vulnerable place. With these thoughts, the bloody guy realized that this was quite an interesting game. At the same moment, a system appeared in front of him that greeted the black-haired man with victory in this battle, and as a reward for the killed desert wolf, he was given 6,000 experience points. Thus, in the blink of an eye, Gil reached the 5th level and now 25 skill points are available to him. After receiving a new level, the wounds of the boy were healed, after which the system announced the launch of the hidden level trading platform system. A trading platform appeared in front of Yellow-Eyed. There were many different types of weapons on it, but the guy was dissatisfied with this system. Because this is too dull a section, apparently the developers want Gil to spend his whole life alone. The guy came to his senses and sadly realized that he was not in an adult game. It was immediately characteristic to give experience points for killing creatures, and for raising the level points for distribution. The guy did not understand what a trading platform is, so he decides to click on the button in the system to thoroughly familiarize himself with this platform. A huge selection of various goods appears in front of him. The most unusual thing is that in addition to weapons and armor, there is also home equipment with household appliances in this store. But the guy refuses such a stupid idea. because Gil considers it unreasonable to buy household appliances in the game for so many levels. And the mercenary system generally requires 100 points. Clicking on it opens a yellow portal in front of him, and a buxom mercenary appears in front of the black-haired one, and a sharp blade turns out to be in front of his face. But it was just a hologram. He could choose absolutely different mercenaries, starting with a warrior and ending with an assassin. The choice was very large, but soon another interesting class appeared in front of him. Support. The man had no words. He didn't know who could come up with such a helpless class. At this point, the system reminds Gil that with his level, he can unlock only everyday goods, but the guy already knew this. He just wanted to look at the goods. At the same time, he is given food as a reward. He will be able to survive on the purchased one for some time, but this does not change the situation. He still needs to get out of here. The black-haired man asks the system to show the characteristics window again. His status is now in order, but he still does not know how to get new abilities. Therefore, he decides to temporarily rely on the increase in characteristics. The only thing that bothers him is that after the distribution, the points cannot be returned. And his characteristics will directly affect his future fate. Armor determines survivability, while magic affects damage from magical attacks. Strength evades physical damage, stamina improves defense, and agility improves speed. In the fight with the empty wolf, the difference between them was 5 levels, but in strength and speed, the monster greatly surpassed him. Therefore, he decides that if he encounters other similar monsters, he will need to become faster and stronger to win. In this case, he decides to increase his armor by 5 points, strength by 10 and agility by 10 too, so he spent all the accumulated points. After strengthening the characteristics, his body has also changed. It is filled with strength and becomes more plastic. This is a rather pleasant feeling of strengthening. Turning around, the yellow-eyed kid observes that guests have come to him again, but it was quite timely, because he just wanted to check what he would be capable of after pumping his characteristics. The black-haired man rushes at the wolf and easily blows his head off. With his current level, the thick skin of wolves will not save him from his blade. Another monster rushes onto the guy's back, but he also mercilessly dies. Strengthening the characteristics improves the art of the sword. Now he will be able to survive in this hellish place. With these thoughts, the guy rushes at a pack of wolves and cuts them into pieces. Soon there are fewer and fewer monsters, and gradually his level increased more and more. By the end of the battle, he had reached the 15th level, and now he has 75 skill points available for distribution. This news pleases Gil, because with an increased level it will be much easier to kill monsters. Soon night came. The guy went outside. At the moment he has food and water, and the purpose with which he left his temporary shelter is to find a way out of this damned place while it's not so hot outside. Wandering through the desert at night, the yellow-eyed guy stumbles upon the gnawed carcasses of wolves, but the guy notices strange that they are all dead. Right there on the top of the cliff he notices a dark figure holding the dead wolves in his hands. Having climbed to the hill, he did not find anyone, but he was sure that he saw the silhouette of a man in this direction, and judging by the corpses of wolves, he understands that there really was someone here. At the same time, Yellow-Eyed assumes that this person is also most likely locked up in the game exactly the same as him, but soon he notices that all the blood seems to have been sucked out of the corpses. Gil wonders if the player has committed these atrocities, but soon he realizes that he was very wrong. The system pops up in front of him and warns of the approaching danger. The Pern on the reaction makes a swing with a sword and cuts something dark in half in the darkness of the night. After all these battles, the strength of his weapon reached 25%, and after seeing the side, he clearly realizes that the animals were not killed by a man. At this moment, a strange creature appears out of the night fog. This is a monster that is clearly much higher in class. A monster and desert wolves are radically different opponents. Besides, if Gil's stats hadn't increased after raising the level, then he would already be dead. In the blink of an eye, the strange monster in front of him regenerated. The creature's name is a wandering actor. The level is unknown. The system reports that the actor living in the Rarknea desert has perfect speed, and in this place he is the top of the food chain. He feeds on the blood of living beings, A person cannot hide if the actor is out hunting. Gil was ready to meet a variety of monsters in this realistic game, but the chilling power of this monster scared him. It felt like he was pinned to the ground, taking his body under control. The black-haired guy is experiencing such horror for the first time, from the realization that he was being hunted. The decider rushed at the unsubstantiated guy in a reliable way to take the next blow, but the yellow-eyed one barely manages to dodge the monster, and spitting on his fear, he decides to strike back. Gil will not succumb to intimidation. At this moment, the creature disappears from under his blade and the guy cuts through the air and sticks his blade into the ground, after which he receives a powerful blow to the head from which the kid flew away a decent distance. Having slowed down with the help of his sword, he remained in battle, but Gil did not even expect that this was the speed of the monster that the system was talking about. At this moment, the actor disappears from his place and pierces the stunned boy, after which he falls to the ground. Yellow-Eyed realizes that this blow could well have taken his life, but he does not understand what his opponent is up to. After that, the monster turns around and leaves. The guy is trying to explain how the actor appears in front of him. He makes strange noises, and the strangest thing is that the monster gives the sword to the boy and asks him to kill him. But Gil has already seen this. Usually after catching a mouse, the cat does not hurry to eat it for a while. This monster also decided to play with its prey.